Hello! It's Atlas Mooncast time. We're gonna find Marissa. Hello, hello, hello. Hey! We did it! Ooh, I love this shirt.
Thank you. It's super cozy.
Yeah, is it really cold where you're at too? There's supposed to be like record cold here in Massachusetts.
It was about 30 today, so it wasn't like, no, yeah.
I don't know. We were supposed to get our ish rocked. So, hey, Crystal.
Is my audio okay? I have my phone propped
Yeah,
up, so okay.
I can hear you. Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't too echoey.
Yeah. Welcome. Happy Groundhog Day as well.
Yes, and ball.
Is today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Right. Yes. I know what's up. And it's my puppy's birthday. She is 1 year old. She's technically my parents' dog, but she is just a little light in the world. And I got this tattoo of a dog before we got her, and it is of her. It was like a dog who's a wizard and just like curly haired. And when we got her, I was like, this is that wizard dog I was thinking of.
You just knew.
I did. I just knew. So yeah, she's a soul animal. I always think like pets are like, I'm just looking at my cats and I'm like, I can't believe I get this ancient deity's wisdom in my house.
Right?
Wow.
Oh my God.
Do you have any pets?
Yeah, two cats. Okay, it's Jupiter and Andy. She was an adopted kitty, so she was already named prior to. However, speaking of names, this is great. This is what we're talking about. She was based off of the Andy's mince, like the York patty line, because her mom was York, or her brother was York, and then she's like the Andy's mince, and then there was like patty. So like all of the candies that.
Oh, cute.
And get this, my partner's last name is York. Yeah, and
Did you know, like, did you have the cats before you guys got together? Like,
no, but we were like, we want a cat.
but that's still
Yeah.
amazing. In fact, it's even great. So like okay, that's crazy. Yeah. So the kitty is still Andy York. Still
yeah.
Cute. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So yeah, we're talking about names. Keep going. Let's keep it going because we're talking about names. Oh, actually, do we want to chill first? Want to take it down a notch?
If you want, or if you're like on a vibe right now, then we can.
Let's just keep going. Let's see. Maybe it will end in a thing we never end with.
There we go.
So we don't know. You know, it's backwards, forwards. Oh yeah, Crystal's cat is named Orion, who's like I think he's an orange kitty, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wait, is it Orion or is it Orion?
I think it's like Orion, like the star. But also, is that Orion or Orion? Let's talk about pronunciations actually, too. Like a pronunciation changes the whole basis of the name because it's not really like the name, like the writing, although that's its own thing too, like the symbols, but it's like, how do you say it? Like, what does it sound like when you say it in certain ways? Yeah. What, okay. Will you start us out with your name story? Because I really liked, yeah, just take us through your whole journey of, because you are now going by professionally and, you know, you were Mooney and now you're going by Marissa.
Yeah, and there are still people that call me Mooney though. So it's an interesting dynamic. But obviously Marissa is my birth name, and I got that. It's a combination of my parents' names, Melissa and Mark. So they find their names.
I have this thing with M names. I love M names, and those are two of my favorite names. So that's crazy that your name is like a combination of them. Yeah. I love the name Melissa. I love the name Melissa. My first little crush when I was a kid, her name was Melissa Tobin. Oh my God, I probably shouldn't, as if anyone I know is one. But anyway, yeah, I was 5 years old and I was like, this is love. I know what life is about now. Like, yeah, I was so into her. I was obsessed with her when I was in kindergarten. And then I had a roommate named Melissa at one point, and she was very dear to me, like very sweet, and actually looked a little bit like Melissa from when I was a kid. And I just found out recently, and I can't remember exactly who it is that they serve, but the name Melissa is in part named after Melissae, who were the name of these priestesses who served, I don't remember who. So I often find sometimes if you can't remember the name of a deity or something, it's like they're really here. They're like, and I'm the one thing that's not, I'm everywhere and yet you cannot name me, kind of thing. Yeah, so I felt like that was why I loved the name Melissa my whole life. It was like a revelation I came to a couple of months ago. So I love that you are a part of this Melissa.
Yes. Yeah, and also thinking of the lineage of names. So like my middle name is Marie, and that is the middle name of my mother. And we have Aunt Marie, but she's not actually my aunt. She's like
soul
older,
aunt, soul fam.
She's in the family, but I don't remember how she's specifically related.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of Maries in the family too. And I looked up Marie actually today. So Marie means star of the sea, and it's also in relation to like Mary Magdalene, because it can be a variation of Mary, so it's got biblical reference as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my first and middle name. My last name's Kegeres. It's Germanic. Like I've tried to look up what it is, but it's got so many different roots. Like
wow.
I don't even.
Wow. It sounds so mystical. I've never met someone with that last name before.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know a lot of people with it?
I have met, okay, like one or two. I actually had a distant cousin that I've never met before, and he like ran and won for judge in my local area, and I was like, people were like, oh, you related to this K-Rise judge? And I'm like, my dad's like, yeah, you are. And I was like, okay.
That is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so that's my birth name. And then moving on, it was a couple years ago. How old was I? 16 or 17? Probably 17 whenever Moonies first started.
Becoming your.
Yeah. So it was like more whenever I started to get into a spiritual practice, I guess. And then when I started to struggle too, though. So it was a combination of seeing Mooney Maris, like I wrote that name on a piece of paper in a dream. And I wrote it next to my mom's name. So I was like talking to my mom in a dream, and I wrote both of our names down.
You were a teenager?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And then like a few months to a year later, I was struggling a lot, and I looked at my mom one day and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not always a ray of sunshine. And she's like, that's okay, you're my moonbeam. And I was like, oh. And then like Mooney just sort of came about after that, and I used it more in reference with my spiritual family. So like my family didn't call me Mooney, but my spiritual crew did. And so that's sort of where that developed, and it was more of that essence of myself, of like me learning about my spiritual side and that side of myself apart from my family. And so it was like I had Marissa and Mooney really detached, and like when I was with my family, Marissa seemed fine, but if somebody in public called me Marissa, I'd be like, whoa, that's weird.
It felt like they were bringing out someone who wasn't present. You're like, Mooney is present.
Yeah, and it was weird. And it's like one of my friends too, also, she calls me Mooney, and sometimes whenever I would be like, I want this, or like I'm struggling with this, and she's like, that does not sound like, she's like, bring Mooney out, like where's Mooney? Because when I started going by Mooney, it was like very spiritual, like this is my path, like this is my journey. But over the past few months, as I've kind of, I guess, almost reintegrated both of my personalities into my being, I guess, instead of like rejecting who Marissa was, because I associate Marissa with my family and like obligation and restrictions and being boxed
Yeah.
and
Like
expectations.
who you were told you were, who
Yeah.
you were, you know. Because even
Yeah.
though we choose our name, like your parents did still technically name you Marissa.
Yeah. And for the long, I hated that. I did. And now it's like I'm starting to realize the beauty of that. But it was actually my friend who was helping me do some manifesting and figuring out like my path and what I want to do, both spiritually and professionally and just in general. And he told me about the power that our names have. Because he asked me, he's like, is your name like actually Mooney? Like that's your name, right? And I was like, no, I mean my real name's Marissa. And so he started calling me Marissa, and he's like, because when you want to attract something, think of just the law of energy, the law of the universe, of like just ancient wisdom. Like we give names to things. Like that is the name that was assigned to you. And that is what, you know, the spiritual universal energy knows you as you were born. And it's like that is something that's going to stick with you whether or not you change it. So he's like following the laws of attraction and whatnot. Especially when you want to draw things to you, reference that name and also uncover why you don't use it. Because for me, it was almost a fear of tapping into what that story meant for me. Like, what is the story of Marissa? Like, I didn't know. And so starting to integrate Mooney and Marissa together, it's been interesting, especially because the course that I'm in right now, the Integrative Institute for Integrative Nutrition, we're talking about working with our inner child. And the more that I think about it, the more I think about how I really overshadowed my inner child, Marissa, with like this Mooney of this person coming out. It wasn't like I honored my.
Because you were a teenager when you were Mooney. Like it was like a very short period of time that you had with Marissa.
Yeah, yeah. And I still love Mooney, and I still go like when people call me Mooney, I'm like, hey, call me whatever. But I think for me right now, it's reconnecting and learning what that birth name means to me. And then also today, really looking into my middle name too, because I always hated my middle name. But the more that I've said it, I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of pretty. So yeah, that's kind of the origin story of my names. And I'm going back as well because of the professional pursuit.
Yes.
I don't want to just have my name as Mooney if that's not actually like my birth name. Like I want to first be professional, and then if I introduce myself to clients or coworkers, I want to be like, yeah, but you can call me Mooney if you want, because I go by both.
Yeah, because then, so it's like they then have to gain access. So like Mooney was like front facing, right? And so now it's like Mooney has gone and you know learned this sacred knowledge, and so now if you want access to Mooney, Marissa takes care of that. And how powerful that is, that you're, I know what you mean, or it's like this person who I you know, because when we go through a spiritual journey and we find our practice, we do have to reject the previous self simply because of the way our society is set up. The person that you are essentially like told you are and effectively indoctrinated to be is really not that close to the true self, and that's just the way it is. And so of course that person, the original kind of person, ego I guess or whatever, is like is attached to the name that you're given. So like of course that's that, but it's like we are here to bring our bodies with us anyway. So it's kind of like you're going back around, and it's like you are bringing that self with you too. You're like, okay, I know as Marissa, I can only go so far. Like Mooney must take over from now. And now Mooney's like, great, we're strong enough to go back and get Marissa for this. Like, ooh, that feels good.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I had mentioned what I'm learning in my program right now. And one of the videos we watched the other day was like feelings and desires and putting that into words so that we can really go after these feelings that we desire in our future. And the quote,
naming the feelings.
yeah, yes,
it's like, see, I see you, I name you.
Exactly. And the quote, it was like, words are worlds. we put meaning to a word. I can say one and it can conjure images, emotions, memories, desires in somebody. So they're very emotive and they're very powerful. Like there's different languages, but also images create language too. So words come in many different forms, especially like symbols and sigils, hieroglyphics. Like those are all words.
Yeah.
How we communicate. So like that's what a name is. It's giving power to something. It's manifesting. It's energizing.
This is reminding me of this movie I saw a couple of weekends ago. I only really watch media or go to the movies or something when Spirit's like, you're gonna love this. Like, go on ahead. Like, and I knew there was something I had to watch, and I thought it was gonna be the Banshees of Innisfree or the Irish one, which I did eventually see. I actually saw it the next day. I like spent the whole weekend of the movies. But I just went onto the page, like I was just like, oh, what's playing? And there was this strange movie called The Time I Was Reincarnated into a Slime, which is an anime I'd never heard of before, and I was like, it's this. And in it, there is this subplot of these they're considered like demons or angels. There's just some sort of etheric form, and one of them gets named by a practitioner who's like another character. And so they talk about like how reverent it is that this one character has like their, I don't remember what, also this was like part of a long series, so I can't remember what it was, but it was like this one character had the ability to name these like spirit beings, and that was just kind of a subplot. It wasn't even the main plot of this movie. And this other, so this named character then was able to, it somehow enabled this spirit character to live in like the physical realm because they had this name, and they were communicating with a spirit character who gets involved in all sorts of mischief, and that's like a main plot point. But this character, that other character, who like they were friends in the spirit world, was like a little bit jealous because she was like, a practitioner has never named me before, even though I'm so powerful. And they were like in charge. They actually were like behind some secret magic that was going on with this other character. But she never gets named. There is no name to this character because she is exclusively in like these etheric realms. And they talked about it so casually. Like there was no, like, clearly that's something having to do with the lore that it's based on. But so I saw that actually on, I think it was like the 21st, it's like January 21st or something. And the next day was the 22nd, which was the first day, the Lunar New Year of the Rabbit. And that was when the verbiage of this is a little bit weird, but I was like in prayer effectively. I was kind of like, you know, talking to my guides and really communicating in this like prayer bush that I'm always out in, and like thinking about this stuff. And it just came upon me. It was like, oh, I have a new name too. And I totally forgot about that until just now. But I'm going to send you the link to that movie afterwards, because like it's probably still in theaters, and it's so good. It was very heartfelt, and it was all about friendship and stuff in the end, you know, as it is. But I think they were supposed to be samurai. I think it was, so I wonder if there is something in the samurai tradition of naming. I have no idea. I don't know anything about this movie. I feel totally unprepared. I had thought of it, but I didn't. I recommend it though, if it's, you know.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Rumpelstiltskin. Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time?
Yes, I know that. I haven't seen any movies or anything about it, but I know the lore, the folklore about it. I've always been really fascinated with Rumpelstiltskin. The power of like to know a demon or an entity's name is to like, it's almost like you're caught. Like if you can name it, then you
can own it, basically.
Yeah, you can own it, or just like the acknowledgement of that too.
Yeah, it brings knowledge, like Rumpelstiltskin. So in Once Upon a Time, the ABC show.
Okay.
If you say Rumpelstiltskin, he can appear, just like Beetlejuice too. Say Beetlejuice 3 times.
Yeah.
But with Rumpelstiltskin, with Rumpelstiltskin, if you give him a name, then that is more powerful than giving him a toll, because like he can use that name to connect it to a person, because we connect names to people, to energies. It's like even in the Bible, there's a whole section about whenever they started naming animals and like assigning names to them, because then ultimately it's like there's a dominance, but in some cases
Mhm.
it's more of just like a deeper connection to something. So like being able to summon it or push it away. Like even whenever you think of like banishing spells, or like the things that are like return to sender. I don't know like how much of witchcraft or superstition, you know,
Little.
but like you need the name. It's
Yeah.
like cord cutting. You need the name. So yeah, I just think that's
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah, but I also did see that Crystal had mentioned too that her alternative online last name was Moons,
That's
but she always struggled because she liked the sun too. And I had also thought about that at one point too. But consider this: we always sort of lean towards what we need to work with most, and think
yeah.
about like what the moon represents too, like that lunar energy. So yeah, that being said, you also have shifted into a new name. What energies
Yes.
has that brought for you?
I've been very surprised at how rapidly my life changed into like a different person's life, into like Allisone's life. Um, and but I mean, it's all been like leading up to it. I did want to mention really quick. I just realized, what is that phrase where it's like in the beginning there was the word and the word was God? Like there is, I definitely think within the Jewish traditions, a little bit of like the like living word of God. I just wanted to throw that out there. We can go off on that a little bit. I'll volley that over. Go on.
I'm like thinking like I
Oh,
know what you're talking about, but I'm like
right?
I can't
No?
figure out exactly because
Well, let that simmer. I'll tell you my name story. It's crazy because I feel like I almost can't go back. I feel like I'm a little bit stuck in this, like, all right, I'll start at the beginning. I'll start at the start. So when I was a baby, my parents had a name picked out for me and they named me Laura. And they named me Laura. And so the first night that my mom had to stay overnight in the hospital with me. And that night, she said that she was thinking and thinking and she was looking at me and she was like trying to call me Laura. And she was like, this kid's name is not Laura. Like, what is her name? And in the morning, I don't know if it was exactly like this, but I imagine it, of course, like she awoke from a dream and had this. That was not what happened. But basically, in the morning, she told my dad, I've renamed her. Like, not even like, she was like, this baby's name is Allison, and we're going to call her Allie. And that was my name. All growing up was Allie. And it's crazy that, like, I can remember some of my first memories of being alive were this insistence that Allison was not my name. I was like, I need to be stopped being, I cannot be called Allie or Allison anymore. Like, I was always looking for a different name. And one of the names that I settled on that I always liked was Al. Everyone's like, Al is like a secret name that like my mom calls me, and like very close friends that are almost like, that have been almost mother figures in my life will call me Al, which is kind of interesting. And I always liked Al, and that was cool. But it was like I just never fit into Allison. And even Allie felt I had so much. I grew up. I was very chronically ill, so I was really kind of a sad kid, and I felt like Allie was such a like Allie. He was like so happy, and I was very morose, and I also thought of myself as quite the poet, even very young. So I was very dramatic, and I felt like Allie really didn't represent like the darkness of my soul, you know. So I was always looking for a way out of it. And then, but by the time I got to like college, I like really didn't care, and I really didn't think too much about it. And sometimes people will call me Allison, and that really didn't. I did not feel connected to that at all. And even now, I suspect there's going to be a different time in my life. Well, I'll get to Allison in a second. Like this revelation you're having, because I didn't quite take my birth name. I took like a different name, which is based off of that. So like, is there another revelation coming? We don't know. Stay tuned. But like then I was living in Pittsburgh for a long time, and I love Pittsburgh, and I wound up having to leave, and I wasn't planning on it, but it was the right thing. I had just gone through this really difficult time. Actually, my roommate Melissa had passed away, and it was really difficult. It was just like so bizarre, like the way everything happened, and like I felt very alone, and I was dealing with my own. I just had never really healed from the stuff that happened when I was a kid and from being sick, and like I finally kind of started to, and I found a really good community, and I was so happy in Pittsburgh. And then it was just like all of a sudden I realized, oh, I have to leave. I have to go home. Like almost very urgently, I was like, I need to go back to Boston, and I need to take care of some things. I need to be connected to my family more. And right before I left, I started calling myself Alice. And I don't even really think anyone in Pittsburgh called me Alice now that I think about it. But when I came back to Boston, like I was Alice, and that was that. And it was because I had felt so transformed by my last year there, where I was like I was like felt really thrown asunder. So after she had passed away, my boyfriend at the time, who had been like my best friend, we really shouldn't have been dating. Like it was, I don't, that just probably shouldn't have ended up the way that it was. But just no matter what, like it was, we broke up, and that was very difficult. And then I was, I was like at whatever, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it finally felt like I got through all of that, and I actually wound up being like really healthy for that. I learned to cook for the first time. There were so many milestones in my life I really made. And then and like that name came out of that. And it's interesting, actually, I don't think I realized that have a similar story with how I got this name. During the pandemic, I went through my spiritual awakening, and I felt that my pen name, like, so I also felt very called to be a writer in a way that I had when I was younger, but had been very afraid to follow through with. And I felt, I think truly like I was waiting on, I was like, I need spirit for this. I can't do it alone. So I really needed to be like connected in order to be a writer. And I was having like visions of like stuff in 2020, like crazy stuff. And I felt that my higher self, the person who I became at the end of my lifetime, had traveled back in time at the hour of my death to anoint me as I was then in 2020, and gave me this name and was like, and you're Alice Well now. Alice Well here. And I loved that it was a pun off of All Is Well. And I rode that dragon for a while, and I was like, I'm Alice Well here. Like I really felt so connected to it. But in 2022, I again was thrown into the fires of uncertainty and came out on the other end like so much more connected to spirit in a way that like I'm still dealing with, and this is where I am now. And so and you know, you're the rabbit felt like it made more, it just like, it was almost like I was like, oh, of course my name is Allison. Like it was almost like I'd forgotten it. This is actually the first name that feels like it feels like when I was a little kid, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, what is my name? Like it's the combination of this name somehow, but I never got it. And I feel like it's Allison. I feel like this is like my real name.
Like coming home.
Yeah. And it was so close before, because like Alice Well was like All Is Well, but all I had to do was add this E at the end of my name that I already had, that like I really feel like my mother channeled me telling her was my name, because it means all is one. And that's the thing too. It's all is well meant like, oh, all is well, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it sucks. And it's like, but it's all this one thing. And it's the fact that it's one name. And it just felt like everything like came back to me all of a sudden. Like it wasn't like other timelines. Like I've mentioned before, like, even though I talk about timelines and ghosts and other lives and stuff, like I don't really think about timelines in this quantum way. I think I have this one fixed path. And it felt like I was looking back on, like my childhood self. But since then, it feels like that name has been stamped on my soul. I feel like there's a bottoming out that I can't. There was like a darkness. I mean, like we all have it, right? But like there was like a sadness that I feel like hasn't been there. Like I feel I don't feel lost anymore. Like it feels like like being like, oh, it was that. Like I've had it on the tip of my tongue for a long time. So anyway, I just feel, and I feel like I'm living her life now. And like I can't even get back to Alice Well or Alice. Like I still like people to call me Alice, just like as my friends and everything. But it's like I have that kind of, It's like the sigil. I have a sigil actually. Um, this is my name sigil, the circles and everything. That was also given to me by my higher self when I was channeling in 2020. So that is technically my name. But yeah, like, and I think it's probably the ALLISONE that it represents. So. And sometimes I would have people in 2020 message me because, like, I feel like the energy was like really on then. Like everyone was so explosive. People would message me and they'd be like, "I've been staring at it. I've been looking at what is that symbol?" And I was like, "I don't know either, man. We're in this together."
So you drew that?
Yeah.
That is so.
I know. I love it. I'm trying to figure out a way to get it tattooed, but I don't know how, or like, I don't know, like that'll maybe come to me at some point too, because then like, what does that mean to have that on your body? We're talking about like naming and,
Yeah,
having names on you. Whenever I hear about people getting like the names of their partners tattooed on their body, I'm like, oh my God, what are you trying to have some kind of karma? You're trying to come back next lifetime and have some kind of, what are you doing? That's like blood magic. Crazy.
yeah.
Gee, that's hardcore. Also, this is why I keep having to. My little cat is like, isn't she silly? This is Quat. Oh my God, do you mind if I go off about Quattro for a second here? I think that she wants to be a star for a second. So Quattro, look at you doing your paws. I got her off the internet for $40, and she came with the name Quattro, and I thought it was very, it's kind of silly. It means four in Italian. She's like she's Quattro with a Q. And I got her on the internet, and they said that they needed to get rid of her because they couldn't, she's so needy, and they couldn't give her as much attention as she needs. So I was like, I want her. That's great. And so they named her Quattro because they got her on the 4th of, or she was born on the 4th of July, or they got her on the 4th of July. I think they got her on the 4th of July. And as it turns out, which has been really interesting, is like, so 4 is obviously a number that I have been drawn to my whole life. Because you and I have talked about that, that 4 is kind of a lucky number for us. But during my awakening, I found, and I was, studying Taoism, and I found out that the Taoists skip the number 4 when they go through the numbers. They literally just don't even talk about it. It's like, the number 13, like how they're, people, sometimes it's bad luck to make the 13th floor on a hotel. They just skip it.
Yeah.
Like that's what the Taoists do. They skip number 4. And it's because it means death. And I feel like there's even like, there's so many like little black and white cats that come into my life that I feel like are this representation of Quattro. And I feel like she somehow she's like a deity or something. I don't know. She's like, she's like death incarnate. And like, it turns out Death's like adorable, like it's like an approachable, loving friend. Who is just around, to roll around. So yeah, there's just something like really magical about her. And I know that it's because of her name. Like I almost named her something else, and then she got really sick. So I had to take her to the vet, and they were like, "What's her name?" And I was like, "That's That's Quattro." And she's been Quat ever. Yeah. I mean, you can't, and you call her Quat. Quat. And she is such a Quat. This cat is such a Quad. Like, I love her so much. I'm like obsessed with this cat. Anyway, so yeah. So her name is special too. And Nori, my other cat, her name in Japanese, I thought it was just like nori seaweed. But it turns out it means doctrine is another word for it.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, who knew?
Yeah. It's interesting too, a name and word, location, name, word, whatever, that I've been drawn to for a very long time. And it's interesting because I don't really know a lot about it. It's Avalon. And I know there's a lot of folklore around it. I know but I even wrote I did a couple years ago. It was like a free flow, like conscious, right? Like we did a meditation, and then I was like, don't think, just write. And I was like, how am I not supposed to think? Like, what do you mean, just write?
Yeah.
But I did. And in it, I wrote something about Avalon. And I read it afterwards, and I'm
Wow.
like, where did this even come from? Like, I have never even really looked into Avalon, but something about it. And then today I was doing research because I read a book by Lisa Lister. It's her book called Witch. And in it, she had gone to the White Springs in White Spring, Glastonbury, England. And I thought it was Ireland. I don't know why, but I kept thinking Ireland. So that's why I looked it back up today, actually, because I wanted to figure it out because I'm going to Ireland at some point here. So, like,
Wait, do we know when?
home, we're manifesting May and June,
Okay.
mid-May to mid-June of this. So a couple months. In a couple months, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
It's crazy that we're both going to Ireland this year.
Oh my God, I forgot that you were. I was like, what?
That's what I thought. I was like, are you going to the thing? Am I like, what? I thought that's what we were talking about.
Wait, when is that again?
That's in August.
Okay. Okay.
We can talk. We'll talk.
Yeah. We'll talk. But anyway,
Yeah.
I looked it up, and it's actually in England, not Ireland. But
Well, Scotland.
it's right the
Glastonbury's in, is Glastonbury Scotland or England?
England. Yeah, it's in England.
Glastonbury's in England.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I don't know. The UK's all the same.
it's like all
It's the same continent, isn't it? Scotland and England. They're connected.
Are they?
Are they?
I don't.
Are they connected? I'm sorry. Come on. Tell your story. I don't know what.
Anyway, it talks about Avalon and like the mists of Avalon and this
That's what
like, Arthurian legend and like how that the White Springs are connected to that. And I've always felt really drawn to the White Spring since I read that book. And I didn't remember that it had said something about Avalon. And when I was researching it today, I was like, what? And it was more specifically too how it's like I wrote that name and I thought about it a few times throughout the past couple years, but the past like week and a half, every day, constantly in the back of my mind, Avalon, 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 Avalon. And I'm like, why? Why do I keep thinking of this?
You're like going on this pilgrimage to fucking Avalon.
Oh my God. And that word specifically is what is used on all the research websites that I was looking at today. Pilgrimage to Avalon. And I was like,
dude, this is like hardcore.
Like, what? But it's funny how I thought about it was also you were talking about your cat and the name Avalon kept popping in my head. But I was at work at the bookshop like 2 days ago, right? And I walked to the back room and I don't know how I heard it because there's a huge metal door and I was putting like one of the books in the back and I just heard and I was like, what in God's, like, where is this coming from? And it was really quiet, but it was that kind of moany, screamy type of sound. I was like, that sounds like a cat or somebody is in pain. And I like tried to peek out the back window and I couldn't see anything. And I opened the back door and this cat is just like, let me in, let me in. And it was a female kitty. She had like these beautiful brown amber eyes and she had a little pink collar with a bell on it, like a little jingle bell. I've never seen him before. In the 6 months that I've like been going to the bookshop, I've never seen her before.
Wow.
And she just stayed there whining at the door. And she wasn't there yesterday or the day before when I went back, but she was there two days ago. And my boss didn't first say anything about like having ever seen a cat, but I was like, where did this cat come from? And I was the reason
fairy realms. She
walked
walked through a portal.
Right? But it's crazy because so how this all correlates back to names and like Avalon and the cat is my brain was like, I want to name something that is significant to me, Avalon. And I saw this cat and I was like, I want to take this cat in and it's going to be mine and I'm going to name it Avalon. And I was like, I can't do that. It's got a collar. It's somebody's cat. But like in my brain, the idea of having something significant to me,
Name it that. It's almost like where to put it, where, like how to
Exactly.
bring it into the physical realm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where do I put this name? What do I do with it? I have it. I need to channel it into something. And that's really, I guess, what we do with names. Like we channel it. And so, like my cat, Jupiter, that is the god of thunder and storms and chaos. And he is most definitely that.
Oh.
So yeah,
Wow.
Full Avalon tangent. I just
That's
had to.
crazy. That's really, yes. I know exactly what you mean though, when it's like something's just in the back of your mind and it's just there, and it's this it's almost like a bookmark, or like a, yeah, just like a tiny little breadcrumb on the path that's like, just go this way. Like, you know, already. You've already been to Avalon is like
Oh,
effectively what this means, you know?
yeah.
I feel like that we don't get signs until we've done it. You know, like I just feel like that's like the go ahead. It's like Spirit's like, I've looked ahead and this is the way.
Yes.
Like, you've already done it. I know that this is gonna be a hit.
Yeah. And that's what I was like,
Wow.
so my traveling, like, vision of what we were gonna do was Scotland and Ireland, but I was like, what if I I need to go see this. Like, I need to.
You have to go. Oh my God. Yes. If you do nothing else,
I
this is where
know.
you have to go.
And Ireland has always been a non-negotiable. So maybe instead of Scotland and Ireland, I do Ireland and Glastonbury to see Avalon. I go to Avalon. I go to my home.
Glastonbury was, what am I thinking of that's in Scotland? I've been so called to Scotland recently. I'm going to Ireland, and everything on my FYP, everything like that's on TV, all of these things are like Scotland, 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 Scotland. And I'm like, why? I'm not going to Scotland. What the hell's in Scotland?
Exactly.
Turns out there's a lot of shit in Scotland that's super witchy that I had no idea about.
Yes.
I gotta go to Scotland at some point, because there's some, I have to go, there's that church, Rosslyn Chapel.
Yeah. Have you seen Outlander? Have you read Outlander?
Outland, no. Is it surround? Isn't there time travel in Outlander?
Yeah, and it's all in Scotland.
Well, guess what I'm about to read?
It's long. I just got all of it. It's on my reading list next. I have 2 books to finish before I start it. But the books are dense. However, I am committed. I'm gonna do it. And I was like, I need to start it before I travel.
Oh yeah, tell me when we'll have a little book club. We'll both read at the same time. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm you know what's so funny is just like on a little book tangent. I mean, talking about words having power.
Yeah.
I'll just give a shout out to the Forgotten Storytellers. Oh my God, is that what they're called? Yeah. I realized I haven't talked about them in a while. I did their writing program in 2021, and that's who I'm going to Ireland with. And they, Krista Lynn, who's the astrologer of the duo, they're an astrologer and a channeler, and they're both writers. They're like amazing. She always says that that like books are talismans. She's like really into talismans, and her book that she wrote, she was like, you all have to, like, she actually gave it to us for free, but I bought the physical copy. Like, she gave us like the PDF for this class that we took, but she was like, this book is a talisman, and I bought it specifically because like I can open any page and I can feel like her in it. I can feel this magic in it. Words are so powerful, and like if you create a book, that's like it's like a compact world, and it truly is a talisman. And I nothing is more so than Be Here Now by Ram Dass, which is this magical ass book that finds people have the craziest stories about reading Be Here Now. And I knew that it would come to me at some point, and I just started. And actually I feel, and that was very similar to with the name and just kind of the whole, you know, phase of my life that I'm in now. I feel that Ram Dass is my teacher for this period of time in my life. So I'm reading that, and then I'm ready, is what I'm trying to say. I gotta like find enlightenment first, and then I'll be there. I'll go to Avalon. But I love, you know what's cool is having the juxtaposition of like Ram Dass, meditation, all this sort of stuff on Taoism on one hand, and then also being like, and like magic and story and myth and witchcraft, like all of it combined really creates like a full spiritual experience. I feel I wouldn't do without any of it, you know, like I love all of those things. Even though sometimes they seem to not, like, sometimes they don't even reference each other, but I'm like, oh, this is the same thing. This is the same.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
What's another thing about names we can talk about? Let me think for a second. There was something I wanted to bring up. Oh, I wanted to go off a little bit about, you know, obviously when we what I named our episode is like, what's in a name?
Yeah.
But then also there's the classic phrase, Oh my gosh, would a rose be as sweet with by any other name? What if, the Shakespeare quote that's like, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, meaning, oh, like, so he, obviously in Romeo and Juliet, he's in love with, oh my God, is he Montague and she Capulet, one or the other? Don't remember. Read that maybe in high school. But yeah, effectively, like, their name is the issue. They've got these names, these houses. When you have a name, like talking about your last name, like that represented you. That was like the dynasty that you were a part of. And, talking about how like, uh, you know, how someone can have a name, but you have this totally different experience with them, and you realize like, oh, we're all just people. Like, we have these names and we have these human experiences, but then afterwards, there, under all of that, there is no name. There's like the nameless one. Like there's the nothing and the everything, and then you're just you again, and there's just whatever. I don't even really think, oh, I sometimes call myself Buddy. I don't really call myself anything, but I'll call myself Bud or Buddy. That's like my name for myself, I'd say.
Yeah. It's like even nicknames. Like you
Yeah.
have partners. There's terms of endearment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's also too that made
Because
me
there's like sides of themselves that only you get to see,
exactly like
Special name.
I mean you have like baby and whatnot, but like you also have ones that you come up with unique to your relationship. And,
Hold on, this cat is.
oh no, Quat.
She got stuck in my
Oh.
sweater. Her little claws are getting kind of crazy.
I need a trip.
Yeah, we'll do that later. It's on the
Um,
schedule.
But yeah, so I was thinking about too, as you were talking, it brought up that names provide understanding. And what the example that came to my mind is people who have a personality or bipolar or multiple personality disorders. Whenever there's different energies or entire personas, like people and personalities in their mind, they dissociate from it and they create a name for it. It's like, that's not me. Or like, I can give a personal example. It's not to like, because I mean this, no offense to anyone. So a personal example, like I have struggled with an eating disorder in the past. The way that it was presented to me was name it. Name your eating disorder so that you have power over it. And it's separate from you and you control it. And I have a book that's titled like Life Without Ed, and the author, she named.
Yeah, I know that book.
That's fantastic. But she named her eating disorder Ed, and she even talks about how that helped her separate from it and also have power over it, but claim it in a different way. So it's like it brings a level of understanding so that we can better get a different perspective, I guess.
And also, and be someone different without it.
Exactly.
Because if sometimes we need to separate things out. It's such a strange, in life when we change, we kind of like die, and it's almost like the names of those. I mean, I have no idea what this process is like, but I know sometimes trans people refer to their name beforehand as their dead name, as like the person, and that there is a grieving process of like putting all of that aside. And so I think that this is a universal understanding we have of like just becoming a different person, like within your lifetime, dying and being reborn. And it doesn't have to be spiritual, it doesn't have to be anything. Like there are all sorts of different circumstances where someone can have a totally different name, and that allows us to move on from who we were, like a fresh start again, and to shed all that skin. It's almost like a fresh shell for our little hermit crab body, like walking around feeling brand new. New shell, who's this,
Oh, yes, yeah.
Man, good. This is so funny that I feel like the past couple of episodes, especially well, what's funny is I realized last episode was our 4th episode, and it felt special.
It did. It was, yeah, it did. I told John afterwards, I was like, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Like I felt
I watched it afterwards and I was like, wow. That's crazy. There's something going on there, wasn't there?
Right.
Yeah. Where was I going with that? I don't remember. Oh yeah. We'd been sort of like, either we've been like tired, or there'd been stuff going on and we had to do these short episodes. But I feel like this hour went by so fast. This went by really fast.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do we want to close with a little meditation? We're doing everything upside down and backwards today.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm standing, so I'm going to step my feet here, wiggle my toes into my carpet. Really just grounding back down. Yes, stretching, reaching your arms overhead. Maybe move your body if you haven't. And bring your gaze to something in the room around you, wherever you are. And just look at it. Take in its colors, the image, take in whatever it elicits. Maybe it brings out a memory if you're looking at a photograph, or it brings out an emotion. And thinking back through our entire podcast, think about the words that it also brings to your mind, the names you put to this object. And study it for a second, and then gently close down your eyes as you're grounded, and visualize the object or the space that you were just looking at. And see if from the descriptions that you had created and that you had observed, if you can draw it back to your mind. And just witness it for what it is. We're cultivating a sense of imagination and really holding our focus and our creativity. And consider how you interpret the world around you. When you close your eyes and you can't see it anymore, how does that shift what it means to you? And coming back into your body, wiggling your toes. And notice as you slowly release the energy, the images, the colors, the words from the object that you had been looking at and that you had created in your mind. And taking a deep breath in and holding it at the top. And then as you exhale, open your eyes back and rest them on that place that you had them just before you closed them. And notice any shifts in your perspective. Does it feel different? Does it look different? Does it bring up different words? And when you're ready, you can draw your hands to your heart. And taking one more breath, come back to yourself. And then say your name, Marissa.
That was a good one. That was awesome, man. Wow. Did you come up with that just now, or is that something that you did? Wow.
Yeah.
That looks so amazing.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Can I share what I was looking at? Or
Ask us
okay.
Yeah.
You are so, oh my God, that was so wonderful. So my cat wound up like scratching at the door, so I had to go like feed my little quad. She already ate dinner, so but I just wanted to be able to do this. So I like got up and I sat down again, and I was just looking. I just like I have all this stuff, and I looked up at the light that I have, and it's these like they're these overhead lights, and you were like, oh, what do they remind you of? And I was like, I don't know. When I was a kid, you know, my mom used to say like, you know, turn off the big light when you're leaving. Like we can't have the big lights on, and so you were like, and now name it, and I was like, big light. Like I don't know. I was like, I think I did this wrong. I was like, I don't know that I'm doing this right, because I was like, it's the ceiling. Like it's literally they're just there. And then we went through this whole thing, and at the end, when you were like, look at it again, I was like, oh, they're eyes. Like they are these eyes. Like they felt suddenly alive. Like and so watchful. And something about the sun. I'm very connected to this sun though. So like it's the big light is the eyes. Yeah. I think I'm gonna think about that for to turn on the lights in the and it's like the sun. It's like the big light in your house. Yeah. I can't I actually like definitely unlocked something there for a split second, which is crazy. Which is crazy.
That is so crazy. Also, wanted to mention, because you said that, and that literally made me think of today being Imbolc. One of the pagan...
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, one of the pagan and Irish traditions was to turn on, like, all the lights in the house, even just for a few seconds, to welcome the sun back. Or to light a candle in every single room, and you welcome...
What?
Yeah.
Are you shitting me? Oh my god!
So yeah, that's how I just like connected those two dots. But yeah, the sun and the lights, and yeah, that's what one of the traditions is.
Wow. Wow. Oh my god. I had this thing when I was a kid, where I used to run around and turn all the lights on in my house. So I feel like I maybe will connect that for myself after this. I'm clearly gonna have some sort of festival of lights in the house after this. I don't know. Wow. Thank you so much. What a like, man, I love doing this with you. Can I just say?
I look great forward to this every week. I do. It keeps me going.
Yes. And it's a place where spirit can find us. We've been like, we're gonna be here. Find us there.
Exactly. That meditation. I had no idea what I was gonna do. I was like, yeah, I'll just take a couple deep breaths, and spirit was like, or
riff it, yeah. Wow. Cool. That was great. And we don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Which is great. And it'll be amazing. Wonderful. I'll see you then.
Yeah. Thank you.